Alright, in this video we're going to talk more about the discriminant, which is everything under the radical, the b squared minus 4ac. That value is called the discriminant. Now why that matters to us is that we can find out what that value is, and based on that value it'll tell you how many solutions the equation will have. If it's positive, it'll have two real solutions. If the discriminant is 0, it will have one real solution. If the discriminant is negative, then it won't have any real solutions. And what that looks like graphed is following. So if it's positive, which is what this says, if the discriminant is positive, then it'll look like one of these two graphs. Notice they both pass over the x-axis. So they cross through here and they cross through there. And even more than that, they cross twice, which is where the two real solutions come in. If you remember, when it crosses over, wherever it crosses over, these are called roots or solutions or zeros, and they're all the same thing. Like, this is where the solution is. You can look at a graph and see what the solution is. For example, this parabola passes over the x-axis at positive 6 and at negative 1. So what that means is that in the equation itself, one of the solutions was x minus 6 and x plus 1, which, if you look here, is exactly what I entered to be able to graph this parabola. I also could have distributed and multiplied it out and got x squared minus 5x minus 6, and that would have been the same parabola. Okay, so that was all when the discriminant is positive. When the discriminant actually equals 0, then it looks like this. The parabola just barely touches the x-axis, and it only touches it in exactly 1 point. Okay? And that would be if they're both the same value. For example, notice that the parabola touches at positive 3, which would mean x minus 3 would have to have been in the problem, but because it touches just a little bit, like the one time, they both were x minus 3s. So it's a perfect square. Okay, notice that if it's a negative number, it's not going to cross over the x-axis at all, And when it doesn't cross over that at all, it can cross over the y, no problem. But it's the x that has the solutions. So when it looks like this, it won't have any real solutions at all. But you can't really look at one and tell whether it's going to be like that. For example, looking at an equation like this, you wouldn't right off the bat be able to tell that that's not going to have any real solutions. Either you're going to have to work out and find the discriminant, or you're going to have to graph it and see whether it's going to have any real solutions or not. And it's not that it doesn't have any solutions, it's that it doesn't have a real solution. So there's such things as real numbers, which is everything that we've used so far, and then there's imaginary numbers. And I'm not making that up, it really is. It's called complex numbers. And we're going to learn about those next. But for right now, just know that it's not that we can't solve these problems, these ones with the negative discriminant. It's that they're not going to have a real solution, real number solution. Okay, so we're going to do A, B, and C, because we actually need all of those to be able to figure out the discriminant. So C is 7 and B is negative 3. So we're only using the discriminant portion, which is b squared minus 4ac. And we're only trying to find out, we don't really care what the number is, we only care whether it's positive, 0, or negative. So b squared would be negative 3 squared, which is going to be positive 9. So let's go ahead and fill it in. So negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Then we have a times c, which is 2 times 7. And 4 times 2 is 8, times 7 is 56. So this is definitely going to be a negative number, because 9 minus 56 is some negative number. So this is negative, so this is not going to have any real solutions. So no real solutions. The next one, notice it's not in good format. It needs to look like this. So the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to move the 6x and the 5 across the equal sign, and then we'll go from there. So the first thing we're going to do is subtract 6x, and let's just subtract the 5 at the same time from both sides. So now it's going to be x squared minus 6x minus 5 equals 0, because if I move everything over to the left-hand side, there won't be anything left on the right side of the equation, so it will be 0. Another way to think about it is, and I've said this in other videos, anytime that you pick something up, let's say that this equal sign had a wall there, anytime that you pick up something and drag it over to the other side of the equation, as soon as it passes over the equal sign, like it's positive 6, it's positive 6x, as soon as it passes over, it changes its sign. So now it's negative 6x, negative 6x. So it was positive, and then now it's changing and it's a negative 6x. Same thing with your 5, it's a positive 5, and we pick it up and we drag it over, it's positive, it's positive, it's positive, it's positive, and now all of a sudden it's negative, 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 and we got negative 5. So everything is over here on this side of the equation, nothing's left over here. So I'm going to rewrite it down here. So on the right-hand side, I don't have anything left. But over here, I have x squared minus 6x minus 5. So either way you do it, you can subtract and move it across the equal sign, or you can just imagine that you're picking it up and dragging it across the equal sign. As soon as you cross over the equal sign, it will change its sign. If it was positive, it'll become negative. If it was negative, it'll become positive. Alright, now that we have it in this format, now we can get our A, B, and C. So A is 1, B is negative 6, and C is negative 5. And if you didn't do this part, you definitely would get wrong answers, because otherwise you would say that B is positive 6 and C is positive 5, which is not true. I'm going to go ahead and just write it down here. So B squared minus 4AC. So negative 6 times negative 6 is 36. And A times C would be 1 times negative 5. Well, 4 times 1 is 4, and 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. So I'm going to erase this and put negative 20 in its spot. But when you add a negative, it's really like you're adding. So this is definitely going to be a positive, because no matter what, I can't get a negative answer. I'm adding two positive numbers, and it's going to be positive 56. But all we care about, we don't really care about the number. We only care about, is it positive, is it negative, or is it 0? So this one would have two real solutions. Okay, so you have an assignment, and let's just do one of these together. The top part is, based on a graph, and you should be able to look at the graph and tell the answer. But if not, you can always use the equation and find out the discriminant. But 1, 2, and 3, you should be able to look at them and see what the answer is. But down here, they're not graphed, so you actually have to find the discriminant. Let's do number 11 together. So I'm going to write it again on the next page. Alright, notice that it's not in good format. we need everything on the left-hand side, and we need 0 on the right. So I'm going to pick up this 2x, and I'm going to drag it across the equal sign, and when I do, it's going to turn into a negative 2x. And then there won't be anything left on the right-hand side. So I'm going to erase all this. This is going to equal 0. And I'm going to have a minus 2x here. But it's still not in good format because we need to have it, the x squared value comes first, and then the x value, and then the number value. Now it's in good format. So when you drag it over, think about where you're going to drop it. You know, do you need to drop it in the middle? Do you need to put it in the front, in the back? You know, so think about it before you write it. Save yourself some time. But now that we have it, we can do the A, B, and C. So A is 1/3, B is negative 2, and C is 3. So negative 2 times negative 2 is going to be a positive 4. A times C, well, A is 1/3, and C is 3. 3 is also, you could also write it 3 over 1, which is what I'm going to write because I actually think it's going to help us. When you multiply fractions, if the same number is on the top than it is on the bottom, they cancel out. So these 3's will cancel out, and the 1's will cancel out, but not that it matters. The 1's don't really mean anything when you're multiplying or dividing. So what I really have is 4 times 1, which is just going to be 4, because all of that canceled away into 1's. Well, 4 minus 4 is 0, which is one of our options. And so if you remember, if the discriminant is 0, then that means that there's one real solution. So that would be this one. So 11 would be B. So I want you to do the rest of them. Make sure that when they're like this, that you move everything over to the left-hand side before you start. Okay? So the very first thing that you're going to do is look at it and see whether or not it's equal to 0. If it is not equal to 0, you have to start with that. Don't pick out your A, B, and C yet. If you have any questions, please raise your hand and ask for help.